When power meets innocence, when wealth faces poverty, when a CEO answers a phone he threw away in anger and hears a little girl's trembling voice calling him daddy for triplet babies he never knew existed, what happens next will break your heart and put it back together. Will he find her before it's too late? Before we begin this incredible journey, type love in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches. The Seattle skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against the November twilight as Nathan Crawford stood at his corner office window, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. The phone in his hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. One call, one devastating call that had just cost his company $17 million because some incompetent analyst had misread market projections. His knuckles whitened around the device as rage bubbled through his veins like acid. Without thinking, Nathan grabbed the phone and stormed out of his office, ignoring the concerned looks from his assistant. He rode the elevator down in seething silence, his fury building with each floor. The moment he stepped onto the street level, the cold November air hit his face, but it did nothing to cool his anger. He spotted a large dumpster near the building's side entrance, partially hidden behind a delivery truck. With all the rage burning in his chest, he hurled the phone into the metal bin, hearing the satisfying crack of expensive technology shattering against garbage and metal. He didn't care that it contained 1,000 contacts, confidential information, his entire digital life. Some things you just needed to destroy when the world felt like it was crumbling around you. He turned and walked back inside, leaving behind $17 million in losses and one soon-to-be-discovered phone among the trash. 7 miles away, in a forgotten corner of the city where hope went to die, 7-year-old Maisie Fletcher knelt in a garbage pile behind a condemned warehouse, her small hands sorting through other people's discarded lives. Her purple hoodie, 3 sizes too big and torn at the elbows, hung off her thin shoulders like a cape that had lost its magic. Dirt streaked her hollow cheeks, and her blonde hair hung in tangled knots that hadn't seen a brush in days. She was so tired her bones ached, but she couldn't stop. Not when 3 tiny lives depended on her. "Please let there be something," she whispered, her voice cracking. Her grandmother Rose was back at the shelter watching the triplets, but they needed formula, diapers, anything. 7 days. It had been 7 days since Mama had closed her eyes and never opened them again. 7 days since Maisie's world had shattered into a million pieces she didn't know how to put back together. Grandma Rose tried her best, but she was 74 and her hands shook when she held the babies. They had no money, no food, no hope. Maisie's fingers closed around something hard and smooth. A phone, an expensive one, she could tell even through the cracked screen. It still worked when she pressed the button. 1% battery. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at the device like it had fallen from heaven. Maybe she could sell it. Maybe someone would give her enough money for formula. The babies were so hungry. Little Oliver had cried for 3 hours last night, and Maisie had held him, rocking him, singing the lullaby Mama used to sing, but nothing helped. He was starving and she was failing him. She scrolled through the recent calls with shaking hands. One number appeared again and again. The last call made was just hours ago. Whoever owned this phone had talked to this person a lot. Maybe they would help. Maybe they would understand. With trembling fingers, Maisie pressed the call button and lifted the phone to her ear. It rang once, twice, 3 times. She almost hung up when a deep male voice answered, sharp and impatient. "What now? I told you I don't want to hear another word about those projections. You're fired, Henderson. Don't call this number again." Maisie's throat closed up. She should hang up. This was a mistake. But then she thought of Oliver's hollow cries, of Lily's whimpering, of baby Carter's listless eyes that used to sparkle. She thought of the empty bottles, the soiled diapers they'd rinsed and reused, the desperation that tasted like metal in her mouth. And she remembered something Mama had said once, delirious with fever in those final days, her hand gripping Maisie's so tight it hurt. "If something happens to me, baby, find him. The man from that night at McGinty's. Tell him about the triplets. Nathan." His name was Nathan. "Please don't hang up," Maisie choked out, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. "Please, sir, I found your phone. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need help. I'm 7 years old. and I have to take care of my baby brothers and sister. They're hungry and crying, and I don't know what to do anymore. Mama died 7 days ago. The people at the hospital were nice, but they said we had to leave. Grandma Rose and I took the babies to her tiny apartment, but the landlord said too many people, we had to go. We tried for 3 days to make it work. I used the last of Mama's money for formula, but then it ran out. Grandma's arthritis got so bad she could barely hold 1 baby, let alone 3. On the 4th day, we went to St. Michael's shelter. They gave us a place to sleep, but no food for the babies. That's when I started collecting cans. For 3 days I collected, but it wasn't enough. Today, digging through trash, I found this phone. Mama said before she died that I should find Nathan if things got bad. She said he met her at McGinty's bar on 5th Avenue 18 months ago. She said. Her voice broke into sobs. She said, "You're their daddy." The silence on the other end of the line was so complete that Maisie thought the phone had died. She looked at the screen. Still connected. Battery at 0%. "What did you say?" The voice was different now, strangled, shocked, almost afraid. "Mama said your name is Nathan. She said you met at McGinty's on 5th Avenue. She said it was just one night, but she got pregnant. She never told you because she was ashamed and scared. But now she's gone, and I'm trying so hard to take care of Oliver, Lily, and Carter, but I'm just a kid, and they need formula and diapers, and I can't work fast enough, and Grandma Rose can barely walk, and I don't know what to do anymore." The words tumbled out like water from a broken dam. "Please, if you're really their daddy, please help us, I'm begging you. They're so little, and they didn't ask to be born, and they deserve someone who can take care of them properly." Another beat of silence, then, "Where are you?" "Behind the old Henderson warehouse on Pier Street, near the dumpsters. I was looking for things to sell when I found your phone. Stay there, don't move, I'm coming right now." The line went dead. Maisie stared at the black screen as the phone finally died in her hands. The sky above was darkening to purple, and she could hear the triplets crying even from here, their wails carrying on the cold wind. She'd left them with Grandma Rose at the shelter 6 blocks away. She needed to get back. But what if that man really came? What if he could help? What if Mama had been telling the truth? She tucked the dead phone into her hoodie pocket and ran. Nathan Crawford's hands shook as he grabbed his car keys from his desk drawer. This was insane. Impossible. He'd been careful. Always careful. But 18 months ago there had been one night. One single night when everything in his carefully controlled life had spun off its axis. He'd just lost his father to cancer. Spent weeks watching the strongest man he'd ever known waste away to nothing. The funeral had been that afternoon, and Nathan had walked out of the reception, driven to the seediest bar he could find, and ordered a bottle of the most expensive whiskey they had. He'd wanted to forget, wanted to feel something other than the crushing weight of loss. And then she'd walked in. Sarah. That was her name. Dark hair, sad eyes, a smile that didn't quite reach her face. She'd sat next to him at the bar, ordered a shot of tequila, and said something that made him laugh for the first time in weeks. They'd talked for hours. About loss, about life, about how sometimes you just needed to escape your own head for a while. She'd told him she was a single mother, that she'd been struggling but wanted one night to feel alive again. He'd told her about his father, about the empire he'd built that suddenly felt meaningless. They'd understood each other in a way that terrified him. He'd taken her to a hotel. It was supposed to be just one night. No names exchanged, no numbers swapped. 2 broken people finding comfort in the darkness. He'd left before dawn, and he'd never seen her again. He'd tried to forget her, but sometimes late at night he'd remember the way she'd traced the scar on his shoulder and asked him if it hurt. He'd told her it was from a childhood accident. She'd kissed it, and said scars were proof you'd survived something that tried to break you. And now this, a little girl calling from a garbage dump, claiming Sarah was dead, and he had 3 children he'd never known existed. Nathan's stomach twisted as he raced down the emergency stairs, unable to wait for the elevator. His mind spun with calculations, dates, timelines. 18 months ago. Pregnancy took 9 months. That would make the children 9 months old now. Triplets. The word echoed in his head like a gunshot. The drive to Pier Street took 17 minutes through evening traffic that made him want to scream. He broke every speed limit, ran 2 red lights, didn't care about anything except getting to that warehouse. The neighborhood got worse with every block. Boarded windows, graffiti-covered walls, people huddled in doorways with hollow eyes. This was where his children were living. This was where Sarah had died. Guilt crashed over him like a tidal wave. He should have gotten her number, should have checked on her, should have known. He screeched to a halt behind the warehouse and jumped out of his Mercedes. The dumpsters sat like metal mountains against the brick wall. Trash scattered everywhere. The stench made his eyes water. And there, small and alone, standing next to a rusted shopping cart, was the little girl from the phone. She couldn't have weighed more than 40 pounds. Her eyes were too big for her face, her clothes hung like rags, and she held a plastic bag filled with crushed cans like it was treasure. "Maisie?" His voice came out rough. She nodded, her chin trembling. Up close, Nathan could see Sarah in her features. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her cheekbone. This was Sarah's daughter. A child who'd watched her mother die and then tried to hold the world together with her bare hands. Something cracked open in Nathan's chest. Something he'd kept locked away for so long he'd forgotten it existed. "Where are the babies?" "At the shelter, St. Michael's, 6 blocks that way." She pointed with one dirty hand. "I left them with Grandma Rose, but she can't hold all 3 at once, and they've been crying so much because we ran out of formula yesterday. I was trying to find enough cans to buy more, but it takes so many cans to make $10 and formula costs $15, and I only have $4.37. She was crying now, the words pouring out between sobs. "I tried so hard. I've been working since Mama died. Collecting cans, watching people's kids at the laundromat for quarters, anything I could think of. But it's not enough. I'm not enough. They deserve better than me." Nathan dropped to his knees in the garbage-strewn alley, ignoring the filth soaking into his $1,500 pants. He looked this brave, broken little girl in the eyes and made a promise he would never break. "You did everything right. You are enough. You're more than enough. But you don't have to do this alone anymore. I'm here now, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to help all of you. Can you take me to the babies?" Maisie studied him with eyes far too old for her 7 years. She was trying to decide if she could trust him. Nathan understood. She'd probably learned that adults made promises they didn't keep. That hope was dangerous, that survival meant depending only on yourself. But finally, slowly, she nodded. "Okay. But if you're lying, if you hurt them, I'll fight you with everything I have. They're my family and nobody hurts my family. I swear on my father's grave, Maisie. I will never hurt them. Or you." He held out his hand. After a moment, she took it. Her fingers were ice-cold and rough with calluses no 7-year-old should have. They walked together through the dying light, an unlikely pair bound by tragedy and a phone call that had changed everything. St. Michael's shelter sat wedged between an abandoned factory and a liquor store. The building looked like it might collapse if you breathed on it wrong. Nathan's security team would have had a heart attack if they'd seen him walk through those doors, but he didn't care. Inside, the air smelled like bleach and desperation. Rows of cots lined the walls, each occupied by someone whose life had fallen apart. And there, in the corner, sat an elderly woman with trembling hands, surrounded by 3 baby carriers. The babies were tiny, so impossibly tiny. 2 boys and a girl, just as Maisie had said. They were crying, their faces red and scrunched, their little fists waving. The moment Nathan saw them, something fundamental shifted in his universe. These were his children, his blood, his responsibility, and they were suffering because of his ignorance. "Grandma Rose, I brought him. The man from the phone. He came to help." Maisie's voice was soft, uncertain. The old woman looked up with eyes that had seen too much pain. She studied Nathan with a sharp intelligence that reminded him of his own grandmother. "You're Nathan?" "Yes, ma'am. Sarah talked about you sometimes, when she was sick. Said you were a good man who'd been hurting. Said she should have told you about the babies but was too proud, too scared. Rose's voice grew thick with emotion. When did she get sick? Nathan asked, his voice barely a whisper. Rose's eyes grew distant, remembering. The babies were 6 months old. Sarah had been working herself to the bone, 3 jobs, barely sleeping. She caught what she thought was a bad cold, kept working through it because she couldn't afford to take time off. By the time she finally went to the doctor, the pneumonia had damaged her lungs severely. They found other complications too. Her body had been running on empty for so long it just gave up. Rose's voice cracked. She fought for 3 more months. Watched her babies learn to sit up, to grab toys, to smile. She held on as long as she could, but in the end, her body couldn't fight anymore. She made me promise in those final days that if anything happened to her, I'd make sure someone told you about the triplets. She gave Maisie your first name, the bar where you met, told her to find a way to reach you if I couldn't. Nathan knelt beside the carriers. 3 pairs of eyes, blurry and unfocused, stared up at him. Oliver had Sarah's dark hair. Lily had his own gray eyes. Carter had a dimple on his left cheek that matched the one Nathan saw in the mirror every morning. They were beautiful. Perfect. His. I'm taking all of you home with me. Tonight. Right now. No arguments, no delays. I have a house with enough rooms for everyone. I'll hire nurses, nannies, whoever you need. The babies will have formula, diapers, everything. Maisie will go to the best school in Seattle. Rose, you'll have your own suite with medical care for your arthritis. You're family now, all of you. And I take care of my family. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. This wasn't a request, this was a promise. Maisie started crying harder, great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. You mean it? You really mean it? We can stop living like this? The babies won't be hungry anymore? Never again, I swear it. Nathan pulled her into a hug, and she collapsed against him like a puppet with cut strings. She smelled like garbage and desperation, and he would burn that purple hoodie as soon as possible. But right now, she was holding on to him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had tried to drown her. You're safe now, sweetheart. All of you are safe. As he loaded the babies into his car using carriers that smelled like mildew and poverty, as he helped Rose into the front seat and buckled Maisie into the back, Nathan made a silent promise to Sarah, wherever she was. I'll protect them. I'll give them everything I couldn't give you. I'll be the father they deserve, and I'll make sure Maisie gets to be a kid again. Watch over us and forgive me for not being there when you needed me most. The Mercedes pulled away from St. Michael's shelter, carrying a family that had been forged in tragedy but would be tempered in love. Behind them, the shelter faded into the night. Ahead, a new life waited, full of challenges Nathan couldn't even imagine. But as he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Maisie finally sleeping, her face peaceful for the first time probably in days, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some phone calls changed everything. This one had saved 4 lives. 5 if you counted his own. Nathan's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the Crawford Tower in downtown Seattle, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a 360-degree view of the city. It was a monument to success, filled with modern art, designer furniture, and the kind of silence that money bought. Or at least it had been silent until tonight. Now it echoed with the cries of 3 hungry babies, the shuffle of an elderly woman's footsteps, and the awed whisper of a 7-year-old girl who'd never seen anything like this in her entire life. This is where you live? Maisie stood in the marble foyer, her mouth hanging open. This is bigger than the whole shelter. Are you sure we're allowed to be here? This is your home now. All of this is yours too. Nathan was already on his phone, barking orders to his assistant who'd answered on the first ring despite it being 9 at night. Marcus, I need formula, diapers, baby clothes, cribs, everything for 9-month-old triplets. I need it delivered in the next hour. I don't care if you have to wake up the CEO of Target and have him open the store personally. Make it happen. Also, children's clothes for a 7-year-old girl, size small. No, smaller than that. Extra small. And comfortable clothes for an elderly woman, arthritis-friendly. Send a doctor too. Someone who specializes in pediatrics and geriatrics. Yes, tonight. I'll triple their usual fee. Just get them here. He hung up and turned to find Rose staring at him with tears in her eyes. You're serious about all this? This isn't some kind of joke or charity case that you'll get tired of in a week. Ma'am, I built a billion-dollar company from nothing. When I commit to something, I see it through. These children are my blood, my responsibility, and my privilege. You saved them when I didn't even know they existed. As far as I'm concerned, you're a hero. Let me take care of you the way you took care of them. His voice was gentle but firm. This woman had stepped up when he'd failed. She deserved everything he could give her. The babies were screaming now, that desperate, hungry cry that meant they'd reached their limit. Nathan felt panic rising in his chest. He'd run board meetings with 50 executives, negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions. But he'd never held a baby before. He'd never even changed a diaper. What was he doing? How was he supposed to take care of 3 infants when he didn't know the first thing about parenting? I'll help you. Maisie's small voice cut through his spiral. She moved to the carriers and picked up Oliver with practiced ease, cradling him against her chest. You hold them like this, see? Support their head because their necks are still weak. Then you rock them gently and talk soft. They like to hear your voice. It calms them down. They're 9 months old now. They were born in February. Mama said they came early but healthy, all 3 of them at once. The nurses called it a miracle. Nathan watched this tiny girl who should have been playing with dolls and worrying about homework, expertly soothing a screaming infant. Shame burned hot in his throat. She'd learned all this in 7 days. 7 days of being suddenly responsible for 3 lives. While he'd been throwing phones into dumpsters and worrying about money, she'd been growing up too fast in ways no child ever should. Teach me. His voice came out rough. Maisie looked up, surprised. Then she smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. Okay, come here. You can hold Lily. She's the calm one usually, so she's easier to start with. For the next 20 minutes, while Rose supervised from a chair Nathan had helped her into, Maisie taught him how to hold a baby, how to support their heads, how to recognize different types of cries, how to check if a diaper needed changing. Nathan Crawford, who'd built an empire and commanded respect from everyone he met, took instructions from a 7-year-old and felt grateful for every word. Lily nestled against his chest, and something in his heart that had been frozen for years finally cracked open. This was his daughter. This perfect tiny human was part of him. The doorbell rang, and within minutes, his living room had transformed into a baby supply warehouse. Marcus, his assistant, had somehow procured everything Nathan had demanded and more. Formula, bottles, diapers, wipes, baby clothes, cribs, toys, blankets, everything a baby could possibly need. There were also bags of clothes for Maisie and Rose, and best of all, prepared bottles of formula already at the perfect temperature. The doctor is on her way. She should arrive within 30 minutes. I've also arranged for a night nurse, but she can't start until tomorrow. And sir, I took the liberty of ordering food for you as well. When was the last time you ate? Marcus was efficiency personified, his tablet already showing the next list of tasks. Nathan realized he couldn't remember his last meal. Thank you, Marcus. You're a miracle worker. Take tomorrow off. Absolutely not, sir. You're going to need all the help you can get. Marcus permitted himself a small smile before heading out. While Rose showed Nathan how to prepare bottles the right way, Maisie explored the penthouse with wonder in her eyes. She touched the soft leather couches like they might disappear, stared at the artwork like it was magic, and when she found the guest bathroom with its marble tub and golden fixtures, she actually gasped. Is this real? Can I really take a bath here? You can take a bath in every bathroom if you want, Nathan called from the kitchen where he was learning the precise formula to water ratio. In fact, how about you go pick out some of those new clothes and take a long, hot bath while I feed the triplets? You deserve it. She hesitated at the doorway, twisting her hands together. What if something happens? What if they need me? Then I'll come get you. But Maisie, sweetheart, you've been taking care of them for 7 days straight. Let me do it for one night. Let yourself be a kid for an hour. Please. Nathan looked at her with understanding. She'd been the adult for so long she didn't know how to stop. He recognized that feeling. He'd been the same way after his father died, throwing himself into work to avoid feeling anything. Finally, she nodded and disappeared down the hall with a bag of new clothes. When Nathan heard the bathroom door close and water running, he felt a small victory. 1 hour of childhood restored. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Feeding 3 babies simultaneously was harder than negotiating with hostile investors. Oliver was impatient and kept knocking the bottle away. Carter fell asleep mid-feeding and had to be gently woken. Lily was perfect until she spit up all over Nathan's shirt. But by the time the doctor arrived, all 3 had full bellies and were drowsy in their carriers. Nathan's shirt was ruined, his hair was a mess, and he'd never felt more accomplished in his entire life. Dr. Patricia Chen was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and gentle hands. She examined each baby thoroughly while Nathan hovered nervously, asking questions about every sound and movement. They're undernourished, but not dangerously so. Whoever was taking care of them did the best they could with limited resources. With proper nutrition, they'll catch up to normal weight within a few months. I'll want to see them weekly for the first month, then we can space out visits. Whatever you recommend. Money is no object. Nathan meant it. He'd spend every cent he had if it meant these babies thrived. Dr. Chen also examined Rose's arthritis-swollen joints and prescribed medication that would help with the pain and inflammation. You've been suffering unnecessarily. These should make a significant difference. I'll have them delivered tonight. By the time everyone was settled, it was past midnight. The triplets were asleep in the 3 cribs that Marcus's team had somehow assembled in the spare bedroom that would serve as a temporary nursery. Rose was in the guest suite with her new medication, and Maisie emerged from the bathroom in clean pajamas, her hair washed and brushed, looking like a completely different child. She was still too thin, still had shadows under her eyes, but the layers of grime and desperation were gone. She looked her age for the first time. "I've never had such a nice bath," she whispered, like speaking too loud might break the spell. "There was bubble bath and everything. And these pajamas are so soft. Are you sure they're really for me?" "Everything here is really for you. This is your home now, Maisie, your safe place. No more sleeping in shelters or digging through garbage or working yourself to exhaustion. You get to be 7 years old. You get to play and laugh and just be a kid. Okay?" Nathan knelt, so they were eye level. She threw her arms around his neck and hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for coming. Thank you for saving us." She was crying again, but these were different tears. Relief, joy, hope. Nathan held her and let his own tears fall because pretending to be strong all the time was exhausting, and this little girl had taught him that sometimes falling apart was okay. "Thank you for calling. Thank you for being brave enough to ask for help. Thank you for keeping my children alive when I didn't even know they existed. You're the real hero in this story, kiddo. Don't ever forget that." He tucked her into the bed in what would be her room with clean sheets that smelled like lavender and a window that overlooked the glittering city lights. "If you need anything tonight, anything at all, my room is right next door. Just come wake me up. Will you check on the babies? They wake up a lot at night. They need bottles every 3 hours." Even now, even safe and clean and fed, she was worried about them. "I've set alarms. I'll take care of them. You sleep, sweetheart. Really sleep. You've earned it." He kissed her forehead, something that felt natural despite having known her for less than 6 hours, and turned off the light. Back in the nursery, Nathan stood between the 3 cribs and watched his children sleep. Oliver sucked on his tiny fist. Lily's chest rose and fell in perfect rhythm. Carter had kicked off his blanket, and Nathan gently covered him again. 18 months ago, he'd walked out of a hotel room and left Sarah behind, never knowing this moment was waiting for him, never knowing that one night of seeking comfort would create 3 lives that now depended on him completely. He thought about Sarah, about how scared she must have been discovering she was pregnant with triplets and facing that alone, how she'd struggled to survive while he'd lived in luxury, completely oblivious, how she'd died knowing her children might end up in foster care, separated, lost in a system that didn't care, how Maisie had tried to hold everything together with her small hands and enormous heart. "I'll do better," he whispered to the sleeping babies. "I'll be the father you deserve. I'll make sure Maisie gets her childhood back. I'll take care of Rose. I'll honor your mother's memory by giving you the life she wanted for you but couldn't provide. I promise. On everything I am, I promise. His phone buzzed with emails from the office. Market reports, urgent decisions needed, fires that required his attention. Nathan turned off the phone and set it on the dresser. For the first time in his adult life, work could wait. Nothing was more important than this. Nothing would ever be more important than this again. He settled into the rocking chair in the corner of the nursery and watched his children breathe, each tiny exhale a miracle he hadn't known he was waiting for. Outside, Seattle slept, unaware that in this penthouse a family was being born from tragedy, love was growing from guilt, and one phone call from a garbage dump had rewritten 5 destinies forever. The first weeks of their new life unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance where everyone was still learning the steps. Nathan had taken an indefinite leave from Crawford Industries, shocking his board of directors who'd never seen him miss a single day of work in 15 years. Family emergency, he'd told them, and it was true, though not in the way they imagined. He'd left his CFO in charge and checked emails only after the babies were asleep, usually around midnight when exhaustion made the words blur together. Maisie struggled the most with the transition. She'd wake at dawn, panicked, racing to the nursery to check on the triplets before remembering that Nathan had already fed them at 5 a.m. She'd hover near the kitchen when the housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, prepared meals as if waiting for permission to eat. She'd fold her new clothes obsessively, organizing them by color in her closet, unable to believe they wouldn't disappear. At night, she'd creep into the nursery and just watch the babies sleep, her small face etched with worry that Nathan now recognized as trauma. This child had been forced to become an adult, and learning to be 7 again was harder than either of them had anticipated. "Maisie, sweetheart, want to help me pick out paint colors for your room?" Nathan asked one Saturday morning, finding her organizing the triplets' bottles for the 3rd time that day. "We can make it any color you want. Purple, pink, blue, even rainbow if that's what you like." She looked up with those 2 old eyes. "It's already nice, you don't have to change it." "I know I don't have to, I want to. What's your favorite color?" He sat on the floor next to where she knelt by the bottles, meeting her at her level, something Dr. Patricia Chen had taught him during her weekly visits. Make yourself small. Let them know you're not a threat. Build trust slowly. "I don't know." She said it so quietly he almost missed it. "Mama liked yellow. She said it was happy." Nathan's chest tightened. "Then let's paint it yellow. Bright, happy, sunshine yellow, and we can get you some posters or pictures for the walls. What do you like? Animals, princesses, sports, books?" The word came out like a confession. "I like books, but I'm not very good at reading yet because I missed a lot of school taking care of Mama when she got sick. And then after she died, there wasn't time for school at all." "Then we'll get you all the books you want, and I'll hire the best reading tutor in Seattle. You'll catch up in no time. You're one of the smartest kids I've ever met, Maisie. You kept 3 babies alive with nothing but determination and love. Reading is going to be easy compared to that." He ruffled her hair, and for the first time, she didn't flinch away from his touch. Progress. Tiny, precious progress. The triplets thrived in ways that made Dr. Chen smile during her weekly checkups. Oliver, the impatient one, had started babbling constantly, his dark eyes tracking everything with fierce intelligence. Lily, quiet and observant, would stare at Nathan's face for minutes at a time, as if memorizing every feature. And Carter, the troublemaker, had discovered how to roll over and was constantly escaping his designated play area. They'd each gained 3 pounds, their cheeks filling out, their eyes growing brighter. Watching them transform from malnourished infants to healthy, giggling babies was like watching flowers bloom and fast forward. Rose had blossomed too. With her new medication, the constant pain that had defined her existence eased to manageable levels. She could hold the triplets again without her hands shaking, could walk to the kitchen without wincing with every step. She'd taken over much of the cooking, refusing to let Mrs. Chen do everything, and the penthouse filled with the smells of homemade bread and simmering stews. She told stories about Sarah's childhood, about a little girl who loved to sing and dreamed of becoming a teacher. Nathan listened to every word, hungry for details about the woman he'd barely known but who'd given him these incredible children. Sarah would have loved this, Rose said one evening as they watched Maisie read to the triplets, her voice still halting over bigger words but gaining confidence every day. She always wanted her babies to have a good life. She worked 3 jobs while she was pregnant, saved every penny, but it was never enough. When she got sick, when the hospital bill started piling up, she sold everything we had. Furniture, jewelry, her car. She fought so hard to give them a chance. And then she was gone, and there was nothing left but love and prayers. I should have been there. Nathan's voice was raw with guilt that hadn't faded despite the weeks passing. I should have gotten her number. Should have checked on her, should have known. She didn't want you to know, Nathan. She made that choice. Sarah had her pride, her independence. She was afraid you'd think she was trying to trap you, trying to get your money. She didn't want your pity or your obligation. She wanted you to want them because they were yours, not because you felt guilty. Rose's weathered hand covered his. But I think she also knew, somewhere deep down, that if her babies really needed you, you'd come. And you did. The moment Maisie called, you came. That's what matters. 2 months after that first phone call, Nathan took Maisie to register for school. Whitmore Academy, the best private elementary in Seattle, where children of senators and CEOs learned Latin and played in buildings that looked like castles. Maisie clutched his hand so tight her nails dug into his palm as they walked through the marble hallways. Everyone's going to know I'm different. They're going to know I don't belong here. You belong everywhere I say you belong, and I say you belong here. Nathan stopped and knelt in front of her, his hands on her shoulders. You're Maisie Fletcher, the bravest person I've ever met. You survived things these kids can't even imagine. You saved your siblings' lives. You called a stranger and asked for help when you had no reason to believe anyone would come. That makes you extraordinary. And if anyone, any teacher or student or parent makes you feel less than extraordinary, you come tell me immediately. Understood? She nodded, tears threatening but not falling. She'd gotten better at not crying over the past weeks, and Nathan wasn't sure if that was progress or not. Sometimes he thought she needed to cry more, not less, needed to let out all that trauma she'd been carrying. But she was learning to trust him, slowly, and that was enough for now. The principal, Mrs. Vanessa Hartwell, greeted them with practiced warmth. Mr. Crawford, such a pleasure. And this must be Maisie. Welcome to Whitmore, dear. We're so excited to have you join our 2nd grade class. Her smile was perfectly professional, but Nathan caught the flicker of curiosity in her eyes. The story had gotten out, as stories always did. CEO discovers secret children, takes in orphaned girl. The Seattle Society pages had been buzzing for weeks. Nathan had threatened lawsuits against anyone who published photos or names, protecting his family's privacy as fiercely as he protected his business interests. As Mrs. Hartwell walked them through the school, showing off the library with its thousands of books and the art room with windows overlooking Puget Sound, Nathan watched Maisie's eyes grow wider. This was so far from the underfunded public school she'd attended sporadically before Sarah got sick. This was a different universe entirely, and when they passed the music room and heard a child playing piano, something beautiful and complex that filled the hallway with sound, Maisie stopped dead in her tracks. Mama played piano, she whispered, before we had to sell it. She used to play at night after I went to bed. I'd listen through the walls. It always made me feel safe. Nathan made a mental note. Piano. Add it to the growing list of things Maisie needed to heal. Would you like to learn? Could I? Hope and fear warred in her expression. Hope that good things might actually last this time. Fear that wanting something too much would make it disappear. I'll have a piano delivered this week, and the best teacher in Seattle will give you lessons. Music should be in your life, Maisie. All the beauty that was taken from you, we're going to bring it back. I promise. That night, after the triplets were fed and sleeping, after Rose had retired to her suite, Nathan found Maisie in the newly painted yellow room, surrounded by the books he'd bought her. She'd arranged them by size on her shelves, handling each one like it was made of glass. The walls were covered with framed pictures now, artwork she'd created in her first weeks at Whitmore. Photos of her with the triplets, one of Sarah that Rose had saved. It was slowly becoming a child's room, though Nathan suspected it would take much longer for Maisie to truly feel like it was hers. "Can I tell you something?" she asked as he sat on the edge of her bed. "Something I've been scared to say?" "Always. You can tell me anything, sweetheart. Nothing you say will change how I feel about you." He meant it. This girl had become as much his daughter as the 3 babies sleeping down the hall. Biology had nothing to do with it. "Sometimes I'm angry at Mama." The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back for so long they'd built up pressure. "I know I shouldn't be. She died, and it wasn't her fault, and I should just be sad. But sometimes I'm so angry that she left us. That she got sick and left me alone with 3 babies and no money and no help. That she never told you about them, so we had to suffer. That she made choices that meant I had to grow up so fast. Is that bad? Does that make me a terrible person?" Nathan pulled her into a hug, and this time, she didn't hold back. She cried the way she should have been crying all along, great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. He held her through it, rubbing her back, murmuring reassurances, letting her release all the pain and confusion and anger and grief she'd been drowning in. "It doesn't make you terrible. It makes you human. You're allowed to feel angry. You're allowed to feel sad. You're allowed to feel everything, Maisie. Your mama loved you so much, but she wasn't perfect, and that's okay. Love doesn't mean you can't be angry at someone. It means you feel things deeply because they mattered to you. I miss her so much." Maisie's voice was muffled against his chest. "But I'm also glad we're here, and that makes me feel guilty because how can I be glad when it only happened because she died? Your mama would want you to be happy. She fought so hard to give you a chance at a good life. She'd want you to take it, to enjoy it, to live it fully. Being happy doesn't mean you've forgotten her or that you don't love her. It means you're honoring the sacrifice she made." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "You're doing exactly what she'd want you to do. You're surviving. You're healing. You're letting yourself be loved. That's all any parent wants for their child." They sat like that for a long time, Nathan holding this broken, brave little girl who was slowly learning to be whole again. Outside, the city glittered with a million lights. Inside, in the nursery down the hall, 3 babies slept peacefully, their bellies full, and their futures bright. And in this yellow room that smelled like new paint and hope, a family continued to form, piece by careful piece. But as Nathan finally tucked Maisie in and turned off her light, as he checked on the triplets one more time before heading to his own room, he had no idea that everything was about to get significantly more complicated, because in the morning, a woman would show up at his door claiming to be Sarah's sister. A sister Rose had never mentioned. A sister with a lawyer, a DNA test, and a custody petition that threatened to tear this fragile new family apart. The real battle was just beginning. Her name was Victoria Fletcher, and she looked nothing like Sarah. Where Sarah had been soft and kind-eyed, Victoria was sharp angles and designer suits. She stood in Nathan's penthouse foyer at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, flanked by a lawyer who carried a briefcase like a weapon. Nathan had answered the door himself, having given Mrs. Chen the morning off, and now regretted that decision deeply. "Mr. Crawford, I'm Victoria Fletcher, Sarah's older sister. We need to talk about my niece and nephews." Her voice was cold, professional, the kind of tone that meant trouble. The lawyer beside her, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a predatory smile, handed Nathan a stack of papers before he could respond. Nathan scanned the documents, his blood pressure rising with each word. Petition for custody, claims of unstable environment, questions about his fitness as a parent, demands for immediate placement of all 4 children in Victoria's care. This is insane. Where were you when they were starving in a shelter? Where were you when Sarah was dying? Where were you when Maisie was digging through garbage to feed them? I didn't know Sarah had passed until 2 weeks ago. We'd been estranged for years. I only found out through a friend who saw the news stories about you and your sudden family. I've been conducting my own investigation since then, and what I've found troubles me deeply. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Pain? Guilt? Nathan couldn't tell. Sarah and I had our differences, but those children are my blood. They belong with family, not a stranger who happened to have a one-night stand with their mother. I'm not a stranger. I'm their father. Nathan's voice was steel. Behind him, he heard small footsteps. Maisie, awake and drawn by the voices. She appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, her face pale with worry. She'd gotten good at sensing when something was wrong. Victoria's gaze shifted to Maisie, and her expression softened slightly. Maisie, honey, I'm your Aunt Victoria, your mother's sister. I know you don't remember me. You were very young when I last saw you, but I'm here now. I'm here to take care of you and your siblings the way family should. I don't know you. Maisie's voice was small but firm. She came down the stairs slowly, each step deliberate until she stood next to Nathan. Her small hand found his, fingers intertwining. Nathan takes care of us. He came when I called. Where were you? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Victoria flinched, the first crack in her professional armor. I know you don't understand right now, but this is for the best. Mr. Crawford may have money, but money isn't everything. You need stability, proper family structure, a mother figure. I can provide all of that. I have a beautiful home in Portland, an excellent school district, family support. You'd have cousins, aunts, uncles. A real family. We are a real family. Maisie's grip on Nathan's hand tightened. He's teaching me to read better. He bought me books and painted my room yellow because Mama liked yellow. He gets up every 3 hours to feed Oliver, Lily, and Carter. He sits with me when I have nightmares about Mama dying. He's not perfect, but he tries so hard and he loves us. Where were you when Mama was sick? Why didn't you help her? Victoria's composure cracked further. Your mother and I had a complicated relationship. She made choices I didn't agree with, and we stopped speaking. I didn't know she was sick. I didn't know about the triplets. If I had known, I would have helped. But I can't change the past. I can only try to do right by you now. By taking us away from the only stability we've found, Nathan's voice was quiet but dangerous. By dragging us through a custody battle that will traumatize them further? By pretending you have their best interests at heart when you're really just trying to ease your own guilt for abandoning your sister? The lawyer stepped forward, his voice oily and practiced. Mr. Crawford, my client has every legal right to petition for custody of her biological relatives. The triplets are her nephews and niece. Maisie is her niece. You have no legal relationship to Maisie at all, and your paternity of the triplets, while probable, hasn't been legally established. We're prepared to request immediate DNA testing and temporary custody, pending the results of our petition. Nathan felt the floor shift under his feet. He'd been so focused on caring for the children, on building this family, that he hadn't thought about legal protections, hadn't formalized anything, had just assumed that being their father would be enough. Now he realized how vulnerable they all were, how easily Victoria could rip them apart if she pressed hard enough. I'll fight you. The words came out calm, measured, backed by the full weight of his resources and determination. I'll fight you with every lawyer, every dollar, every connection I have. These children have been through enough. They've found safety and love here. I won't let you destroy that because you're trying to make up for years of abandonment with a sudden attack of conscience. Victoria's mask finally crumbled, revealing the raw emotion beneath. You think I don't know I failed, Sarah? You think I don't lie awake at night wondering if things would have been different if we'd reconciled? I was stupid and prideful and stubborn, and now my baby sister is dead and I can't fix that. But I can make sure her children grow up surrounded by family who shares her blood, her history, her memory. You can't give them that, Mr. Crawford. You barely knew her. You're right, I barely knew Sarah. But I knew her enough to see she was kind and brave and trying her best in an impossible situation. And I know that if she'd wanted her children raised by you, she would have called you instead of telling Maisie to find me. She made a choice, Victoria. She chose to have her daughter reach out to the man from one night over, reaching out to the sister who'd been in her life for years. That should tell you everything you need to know about what Sarah wanted for her children. The silence that followed was broken by a baby's cry from the nursery. Then another. Then all three in a chorus that meant they were awake and hungry and needed attention. Nathan looked down at Maisie, whose face had gone white with fear. "Go wake Grandma Rose and tell her what's happening. Then help her with the triplets. I'll handle this." Maisie nodded and ran, her small feet pounding up the stairs. Nathan turned back to Victoria and her lawyer with an expression that had made grown men back down in boardrooms. "You have two choices. One, you leave now, and we work this out through lawyers in a civilized manner that prioritizes the children's well-being. Two, you push this hostile approach and I will destroy you. I will dig up every skeleton in your closet, every mistake you've ever made, every reason Sarah cut you out of her life. I will make sure every judge in Washington state knows exactly what kind of person would traumatize grieving children for her own sense of righteousness. Choose wisely." Victoria stared at him for a long moment. The lawyer started to speak, but she held up a hand, silencing him. "I'm not the enemy here, Mr. Crawford. I genuinely want what's best for those children." "Then prove it. Work with me, not against me. Let them stay here where they're safe and healing. Be a part of their lives as their aunt, someone who visits and loves them and helps them remember their mother. But don't try to rip them away from the only stability they've known since Sarah died. Don't make them choose. Don't traumatize them further because you're trying to ease your guilt." Something shifted in Victoria's expression. The hardness softened, revealing the grief beneath. "I need to think. I need time to process this." She glanced at her lawyer, who looked disappointed at the lack of immediate conflict. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Crawford, but this conversation isn't over." They left and Nathan sagged against the door the moment it closed. His hands were shaking with adrenaline and fury. Upstairs he could hear Rose comforting Maisie, whose frightened voice carried down the stairs. The triplets were still crying. His phone was buzzing with work emergencies. Everything was falling apart, and he felt powerless to stop it. But then he heard Maisie singing to the babies, the lullaby Sarah used to sing. Her voice was trembling but determined, pushing through fear to comfort her siblings. She was so strong, this little girl who'd been through hell and come out still fighting. If she could be brave, so could he. Nathan climbed the stairs and found them all in the nursery. Rose holding Oliver, Maisie rocking Lily, Carter fussing in his crib. He picked up Carter and joined the symphony of comfort. 4 people working together to soothe 3 scared babies. This was his family. Not perfect, not traditional, not what anyone would have expected, but real. And worth fighting for. "Is she going to take us away?" Maisie's voice was barely a whisper. "Not if I can help it. I promise you, sweetheart. I will fight with everything I have to keep this family together." Nathan meant every word. He'd built an empire from nothing. He'd faced down hostile takeovers, market crashes, betrayals that would have destroyed weaker men. This was just another battle, and he would win, because the alternative was unthinkable. But as he fed Carter his bottle and watched the worry lines deepen on Rose's face, Nathan couldn't shake the fear that gnawed at his gut. What if his best wasn't enough? What if Victoria had legal grounds he couldn't fight? What if trying to keep them put them through more trauma than letting them go? These were impossible questions with no good answers. All he could do was hold his son, promise his daughter safety he wasn't sure he could guarantee, and pray that love would be enough. Sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes the world won. But not this time. He wouldn't allow it. Not this time. The DNA test came back 4 days later, delivered to Nathan's office by courier while he was on a video call with his legal team. He'd assembled the best family law attorneys in the Pacific Northwest, 5 partners from different firms who specialized in custody cases, parental rights, and child welfare. They'd been working around the clock to build his case, to prepare for the fight that now seemed inevitable. Victoria had been silent since their confrontation, which somehow felt more ominous than threats. Nathan opened the envelope with hands that had steadied billion-dollar deals without trembling, but now shook like leaves. He already knew what it would say. He'd felt it in his bones since the moment he'd seen those 3 tiny faces. But having it confirmed, seeing it written in scientific terms that left no room for doubt, made something fundamental shift in his chest. Oliver, Lily, and Carter Crawford were his biological children. Probability of paternity, 99%. He was their father, legally and scientifically. Nothing could change that now. He immediately called his lawyers. DNA is confirmed. I want paternity established in court today. File whatever paperwork is necessary. I want legal custody formalized before Victoria makes her next move. His voice was pure command, the CEO returning after weeks of being simply dad. Some battles required the warrior, not the caregiver. While his legal team worked their magic, Nathan faced a different challenge at home. Maisie had withdrawn into herself over the past few days, barely eating, not sleeping well, clinging to the triplets whenever she wasn't at school. She knew something terrible was hanging over them, and the waiting was destroying her fragile sense of security. That night, Nathan found her in the nursery long past bedtime, sitting on the floor between the cribs just watching her siblings sleep. Can't rest? He sat beside her, their backs against Carter's crib. What if she takes them? What if a judge says I have to go with her because she's actually related to me and you're not? The fear in her voice broke his heart. What if I lose everyone again? I can't do that. I can't survive losing everyone again. Nathan pulled her into his lap like she was much younger than 7, like she needed to be held the way she should have been held when Sarah died. Listen to me very carefully, Maisie Fletcher. I'm going to tell you something I've never told another person in my entire life. When I was 9 years old, my mother left. Just walked out one day and never came back. My dad was devastated, but he didn't fall apart. He got up every morning, went to work, came home and made dinner. He helped me with homework. He taught me to be strong. And you know what he told me when I asked if she'd ever come back? Maisie shook her head, her eyes wide. He said, "Son, family isn't about who gave birth to you. It's about who shows up. It's about who stays when things get hard. It's about who loves you even when you're unlovable. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family." I didn't understand it then. I do now. Nathan cupped her face in his hands, making sure she saw the absolute truth in his eyes. You are my daughter, maybe not by biology, but by every choice that matters. You called me when you needed help and I came. I chose you, Maisie. I chose all of you, and I don't quit on my family ever. But what if the judge doesn't see it that way? What if? Then I'll appeal. And if I lose the appeal, I'll find another way. I'll move to Portland and live next door to Victoria if I have to. I'll visit every single day. I'll make sure you know, beyond any doubt, that you are loved and wanted and mine. There is no scenario, no legal ruling, no force on earth that will make me abandon you. Do you understand? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I love you, Dad. The word hit Nathan like a physical blow. Dad. She'd called him Dad. Not Nathan, not Mr. Crawford. Dad. He hadn't realized how desperately he'd been waiting to hear that word until it fell from her lips. I love you too, sweetheart. More than I knew it was possible to love someone. You and Oliver and Lily and Carter, you've given me a purpose I didn't know I was missing. You've made me better than I was. I will fight for you with my last breath. I promise. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following week, but 2 days before they were supposed to appear in court, Nathan got an unexpected call. Victoria wanted to meet, alone. No lawyers, no judges, just the two of them talking like adults about what was best for the children. Nathan agreed, though every instinct screamed trap. They met at a coffee shop in neutral territory, a small place in Bellevue that served overpriced lattes and had enough witnesses that neither could claim the other had been threatening. Victoria looked different than she had at their first meeting. Smaller somehow. The armor was gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I'll do anything for those kids, including sitting down with someone who's trying to take them from me. Nathan didn't bother hiding his anger. This woman had put his family through hell, and he wasn't in a forgiving mood. I've been doing a lot of thinking. A lot of soul-searching. I hired a private investigator to look into your life, Mr. Crawford. I needed to know what kind of man was raising my sister's children. She held up a hand when Nathan started to protest. I know it was invasive, I know it was wrong, but I had to know. And what I found, It wasn't what I expected. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Nathan opened it to find detailed reports of the past 2 months. Photos of him walking Maisie to school, holding her hand. Security footage of him at Target at 2 a.m., buying more diapers because they'd run out. Screenshots of canceled business meetings, declined opportunities, a company he'd put on autopilot because his children were more important. Statements from Dr. Chen about how well the triplets were thriving. A glowing report from Maisie's teacher about her progress. Even an interview with Rose about how Nathan had saved their lives. "You gave up everything," Victoria said softly. "Your company, your routine, your entire life. You didn't do it for publicity or tax breaks or to look good. You did it because you genuinely love them. Because you chose to be their father, even though you could have written a check and walked away. Of course I love them, they're my children." Nathan didn't understand where this was going, but the tightness in his chest was easing slightly. "Sarah and I fought about everything. Our parents, our choices, our lives. She thought I was cold and ambitious. I thought she was naive and self-destructive. 5 years ago, when Maisie was just a toddler and Sarah told me she was pregnant again by some random guy from a bar, I said terrible things. Things I can never take back. I told her she was throwing her life away, that she'd end up poor and alone and miserable. She told me that at least she'd have love, which was more than I'd ever have with my perfect house and perfect career. We didn't speak after that. 5 years of silence. 5 years where I could have helped her, could have met her babies, could have been a sister instead of a judgmental nightmare." Victoria's voice cracked. "When I found out she died, when I learned she'd been sick and struggling and her daughter had been raising triplets in a homeless shelter, I wanted to die. The guilt was suffocating. I thought if I could get custody of the kids, I could make up for it. I could give them the life Sarah deserved to give them. I could prove I wasn't the monster who abandoned her sister. But you know what I realized?" "What?" Nathan's voice was gentle now, seeing the real person beneath the legal threats. "It's not about me. It's not about my guilt or my need to make amends. It's about what's best for those 4 children, and what's best for them is staying with you. Staying in the home where they're safe and loved and healing. Staying with the man who showed up when Sarah needed someone and who's been showing up every day since. I can't give them that. I can give them money and a nice house and their mother's history. But I can't give them what you've already given them. A father who chose them." Nathan felt tears threatening for the first time in weeks. "What are you saying?" "I'm dropping the custody petition. I'm not going to fight you in court. Those children belong with you." Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. "But I'm asking for something in return. Let me be in their lives. Let me be Aunt Victoria who visits and spoils them and tells them stories about their mother. Let me be family even if I don't deserve it. Give me a chance to do right by Sarah's kids, even though I failed Sarah herself." "Yes." The word came out without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely. Those kids need all the family they can get. They need people who love them and remember their mother and want good things for them. I'm not trying to erase Sarah or cut her off from her history. I'm trying to give them a future. You can be part of that future, Victoria. You should be part of that future." They talked for another hour, working out details. Victoria would visit once a month, would call the kids weekly, would be present for birthdays and holidays. She'd share photos and stories about Sarah, help keep her memory alive for children who were too young to remember her themselves. She'd be a resource, a connection to their history, a reminder that they came from love even when circumstances were complicated. When Nathan got home that evening, he found the entire family in the living room. Rose was reading to Maisie while the triplets played on a blanket with soft blocks. They all looked up when he entered, fear and hope warring in their expressions. He'd told them about the meeting, about the possibility that everything might change today. She dropped the case. Nathan's voice was thick with emotion. "The custody petition is withdrawn. You're all staying here, we're staying together." Maisie screamed and launched herself at him, nearly knocking him over. Rose started crying, covering her face with her hands. The triplets, sensing the emotion but not understanding it, started babbling and clapping. Nathan gathered them all close, his entire family in his arms, and let himself feel the pure relief of a battle won without bloodshed. "And there's more," he said when the chaos settled slightly. "Victoria wants to be part of your lives. She wants to visit and get to know you and be your aunt. She's not trying to take you away anymore. She just wants to love you the way she should have loved your mother. Is that okay?" Maisie thought about it seriously, her face scrunched in concentration. "Will she tell us about Mama? Things Grandma Rose might not remember or didn't know?" "Yes," she promised she would. "Then it's okay. Everyone needs family. Even family that messes up sometimes." The wisdom in those words, coming from a 7-year-old who'd seen more than any child should, made Nathan's heart swell with pride. That night, after everyone was asleep, Nathan stood in the nursery and watched his 3 children dream. Tomorrow he'd file the final paperwork to make his paternity legal and official. Next week he'd start the process to formally adopt Maisie, to make her his daughter in every way that mattered. He'd already talked to her about it, explained what adoption meant, and she'd said yes with a smile that lit up her whole face. In a few months they'd all share the same last name, Crawford. A family made by choice and tragedy and love that refused to quit. His phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. "Thank you for giving me a second chance. Sarah would have liked you. She always said she could tell when someone had a good heart. She was right about you." Nathan typed back. "She was a remarkable person. I wish I'd known her better. But I'll make sure her children know exactly how amazing their mother was. I promise." He looked at the 3 cribs and thought about the phone call that had changed everything. A little girl's desperate voice, a plea for help, a chance to become something more than he'd been. Some people spent their whole lives looking for purpose and never found it. Nathan had found his in a dumpster behind his building, in 3 tiny heartbeats. In a child who'd been brave enough to ask a stranger for help. His father had been right all those years ago. Family wasn't about blood. It was about showing up. It was about staying when things got hard. It was about choosing to love even when biology gave you an excuse to walk away. Nathan had shown up. He'd stayed. He'd chosen love over convenience, family over solitude, messy and imperfect and real over the carefully controlled life he'd built before that phone rang. And as he turned off the nursery light and headed to his own room, as he passed Maisie's door and heard her breathing deep and peaceful for the first time in months, as he thought about tomorrow and next week and all the years stretching ahead, Nathan Crawford smiled. He'd lost a $17 million deal the day he threw his phone into that dumpster, but he'd gained everything that actually mattered. 4 children who needed him, a grandmother who'd become his own mother figure, a sister-in-law who'd found her way back to family, a future full of noise and chaos and love. He'd take that trade every single day for the rest of his life, and he'd never regret it for a moment. Some things were worth more than money. Some calls changed everything. And sometimes, the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. A phone in the trash, a desperate plea, and a heart brave enough to answer.